Dear officers, Namaskar. I am S.N. Pandey, Director, National Water Academy, Pune. I have been assigned the task of interacting with you all on overview of water resources of India. I belong to 1993 batch of engineering services. I have worked for 25 years in Central Water Commission and Ministry of Water Resources, now Ministry of Jal Shakti. I have, for the first 10 years of my service, worked in Basin Planning and Management Organization of CWC, working on various decision support system tools, and had been associated with National Hydrology Project, which was Hydrology Project Phase 1. Then, after that, I worked as executive engineer in Sikkim Investigation Division, Gangtok, for 2 years. After returning from Sikkim Investigation Division, I worked in Dam Safety Organization for around 2.5 years. Subsequently, I worked for 3.5 years in Project Appraisal Organization as Director Cost Appraisal Hydro. Then I went to Ministry of Water Resources, and worked in Brahmaputra and Barak wing there, looking after international relations on water with China, Bhutan, and hydropower of Northeast. Uh, Returning from there, I joined here in National Water Academy and have been working here for 1.5 years. This is a brief introduction about myself, and we'll interact on now the overview of water resources of India. The given topic. In the very beginning, I would wish to talk about certain small things, but I realize that it is important because when I joined the service, in first few days, I received a letter where in the official letter it was written TMC. I was not sure what this TMC is. Then I asked certain people, certain officers, what this TMC is. They told me this is maybe 1,000 million cube or cubic something. I asked them, then what cubic then? So there was confusion whether it was meter or feet. So actually, I wanted to begin with this, that this TMC is 1,000 million cubic feet. So this is a volume of water, say 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. Similarly, we often hear about BCM, billion cubic meter. This is actually a volume of anything, water or something else also, of 1,000 meter by 1,000 meter by 1,000 meter, or 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. You can say it like this also. What you see on the screen is a Sanskrit slok, which is Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. Whatever is in the body, that is in the universe. And why I have mentioned this is that we realize that our body, human body, constitutes about 60 to 65% of water. Also, the earth has 65 to 70%, 71% actually. So, is it a pure coincidence that what we have in body, the same thing we have on earth? 71% of earth's surface is covered by water. But the curious thing is, with this humongous amount of water available around us on the earth, it is true, I am not comparing with universe, but on earth, if we have 70% of water, so why we are facing so much crisis? Or we hear of issues related to water? So I'm reminded of a saying, a doha by Kabir, that jal bich meen piyasi, mohe suni suni ave hasi, means the fish is thirsty, immersed in water, and I am laughing hearing this. This is what Kabir is saying, but this is no laughing matter. When we, as technical people, when we analyze this, that we realize that this may not exactly be a laughing matter. I also used to think when I was a kid that when there is so much water in seas, oceans, ultimately it must be getting evaporated and coming to land, and then there should not be an issue. Lot of rain should be there. But if you see this picture, you will realize that actually this is not a laughing matter. What you see here, it is ocean and this is land. From ocean, you see the evaporation of around 5 lakh cubic kilometer. But out of this, 4 lakh 58,000 cubic kilometer precipitation occurs on the surface of oceans and seas itself. So it means 90% of the water which rises from sea gets back, returns to the sea or oceans in the form of precipitation. Only 10% water comes to the land. So it is around, say, 40 50,000 kilometer cube. But what we receive as rain is 1,10,000 kilometer cube. What we receive from on the land. So, but there is deficit from where from this additional rain came. This additional rain of about 65,000 kilometer cube comes through evapotranspiration from forests or vegetations. Whatever we receive through lakes, etc., whatever evaporates comes back to the again land or water bodies. But there is an additional amount of evapotranspiration of 65,000 kilometer cube. It is an estimate, not a very accurate figure, but rough estimate, which joins the precipitation in the form of precipitation to the land, and it joins the water that is coming in the form of vapor from seas or oceans. So the majority, yani it means about 60% of water is contributed by evapotranspiration from forests. So it's a huge, huge contribution. And it, when we talk about planting trees, it makes immense sense now. Now you understand why we need to plant trees. Many times we do it without knowing why we are doing it. We feel like doing it, that it will induce rains and other benefits. But when you see this diagram, it is very clear why we need to do it. Now, when we see this screen, our share, our country's share in land is 2.4%. As far as water is concerned, it is 4%. And in terms of population, it is 17%. It may seem that land is very small, only 2.4%. But actually, it is not. We are a subcontinent. We are a subcontinent. So we have quite a decent land. That is why we are treated as subcontinent. Water we have 4%. Since we have a population of 17% of the world's population, in relative terms, it shows not in a very positive manner. Now we see that the total precipitation the country receives is 3,880 BCM. This is as per the latest studies by Central Water Commission. And this figure, going by thumb rule, is basically, if you see the average rainfall, which is 1170 millimeter, means slightly more than a meter. Okay. And if we multiply this with our land area, which is 329 million hectares, you would get a figure which will be around this figure. So that way the precipitation is computed. Out of that, what we see, the next item is the total water availability is 1999 BCM. So what happened to the rest? That went back to the system, to the atmosphere, as evapotranspiration. So almost half of the water which falls on the ground, on the land, goes back to the atmosphere. And what remains as average annual flow is 1999 BCM. Out of this, the total utilizable water resources is 1122 BCM. But there is huge gap between the water available and between the utilizable water. As a layman, anybody can raise this issue that why don't you increase your utilizable component and bring this to near the water available. But when we go into detail, then we realize why there is this much gap between the available and utilizable. You see here, the out of this utilizable, the surface water contributes about 60% and the groundwater about 40%. So 690 BCM is surface water and 432 BCM is groundwater. Below that, you can see the current utilizations in surface water and groundwater, which is 65% and 58% respectively. These will increase over a period of time, but our concern is that why there is so much gap in this. When you see the basin-wise details, which is given in this table, you see the total 1869. Basically, this is the figure of an earlier study which was carried out in 1993, in which the water resources was worked out as 1869 BCM. The latest study has worked it out as 1999 BCM. So, but for comparison purpose, this will suffice. You will come to understand what is the issue. When you see the Ganga basin here, out of 525 average flows, utilizable flow is 250, means almost half. So 250 BCM ish cannot be utilized in this because of topography and other factors. But the most stark figure comes out in Brahmaputra, Barak and other. Here you see average flow is 585, whereas utilizable is 24, means almost 560 BCM you cannot use. So 560 here and or if even if you assume it 550 and 250 here, so 800 BCM simply cannot be utilized. Similarly, in these west flowing rivers, which are small rivers but carry a lot of water, these are a group of rivers. Actually, we have 20 river basins, out of which 12 are major river basins and 8 are composite river basins. So you see this west flowing rivers of Kutch, Sabarmati, including Lini, this is composite. Then these are composite. Then east flowing rivers composite basins. So here you see that west flowing rivers from Tapi to Tadri, out of 87 only 12 can be used. Out of 113 only 24. So here also and in all other also it cannot be completely utilized. It is a fact, but in most of it, it is around 80% or more which is being utilized. But the gap which is seen is because of the Brahmaputra, Barak basin and Ganga and these west flowing rivers. This creates a huge gap which explains why we cannot use the total 91999 BCM Here you see around it is 880 BCM difference, out of which you could see there that almost 800, 700 was because of the Ganga and Brahmaputra systems. If you see this picture, you can see the spatial and temporal variation of rainfall. Spatial means in space and temporal is in time. So we all feel this, but you can see here very clearly that we receive around 75% of rains during June to September, except Tamil Nadu. All others receive southwest monsoon. Tamil Nadu receives the northeast monsoon, retreating monsoon. So southwest monsoon is 75%. The total rain is 4,000 or 3,880 BCM. Out of that, 3,000 BCM happens during June to September, which is 75% of the total. And this is also a fact that we don't receive all the water on all days, all 4 months. We receive actually not more than 50 days. All these 75% rainfall are concentrated during 50 days, say, maximum. In real terms, it is 30-40 days, not more than that. But we can see as upper limit, it can be 50 days. So you receive so much rain ratio wise in say 50 days, and you have to use it for 365 days. So naturally, you have to store it somewhere. And if you don't store, it goes waste. So we do not have option other than creating storages. And as is very clear from this map that you receive high rainfall in these areas and in this area. Rest, we don't get that much water. So maximum is at Mausinram, Meghalaya, 11,000 millimeter, and minimum is in Rajasthan, Western Rajasthan, 100 millimeter. Average over the country has been worked out as 1170 millimeter approximately. Now, if we come to the per capita water availability in the country, we see this chart where we see over years, say 1951, we had this much cubic meter per capita per year, and this goes on reducing. But why it is happening is because total quantum of water is same, and your denominator means divisor is your population, which is increasing. If the numerator remains fixed and denominator keeps increasing, naturally this will get reduced. Then there is, and words, if you see words average is 7,600 cubic meter per capita per year. And we have almost reached here, 1,400. We see two lines here. These are called Falkenmark index, which is if the water availability reduces to 1,700 cubic meter per person per year, then it is considered water stress situation. And if it is below 1000 cubic meter, then it is water scarcity situation. So at present, we can be considered in water stress if we take the water available situation. If you take the utilizable, then you are already in water scarcity situation. However, this may be more valid, this criteria may be more valid in case of countries which are small. We are a subcontinent. We have regional variations. So working out on an average basis is not a very correct proposition. So if you see, it would be prudent to see these things as basin wise per capita water availability. And when we see basin wise, so the situation is really bad, except for Brahmaputra, Barak, and Brahmani Batarni, Narmada, and west flowing clusters. In all other cases, we see that water stress situation is there. And where we have surplus, we are not able to properly utilize because of lack of storages, etc. And this water is going to Bay of Bengal. Is going waste. So we don't have much option than to create more storages on Brahmaputra as far as possible. Now this table shows the food requirement at all India level. Here, population is increasing. Food production, if you see, has also increased a lot. But you can assume that it is around 300 million tons at the moment. But by 2050, we have to arrange food production by 450 million tons, means 1.5 times. So how we increased from 50 ton to 250 ton or 300 ton during these years was because of the Green Revolution. When we realized that we are such a big country that it is very difficult for any country to feed us or to supply grains to the extent that the whole country can be fed. Another issue was that during 70s it was felt that some countries are using it as a hedge or a tool to seeing our dependence on them. They are not using this thing appropriately. So the nation took a decision to increase our food grain production. And it was mainly done by increasing our irrigation potential, by creating storages, by creating, by improving the grain and seed variety, and by using fertilizers, all these things combined, but mainly there was a massive increase in irrigation, and that is why we could achieve self-sufficiency during these years. But now again, if we see 25 years, 30 years down the line, we again need a massive increase. And again, we have to see how we can increase our irrigation potential, how we can increase our storages to the maximum possible, because the easy sites have always already been utilized, and now you have to go for more difficult sites. If you see these figures of storage creation, uh, you see we had very little storage before plan schemes came, and by year 2014 we have this 253 bcm as storage, and under construction were 51, and under consideration 109 or 110 bcm. But you can assume it that by now it should be around 300 bcm maximum. So we have to create another 150 bcm in next 30 years, and for that we have to think from where we can do it. One of the thoughts on this is that in 2003 the government had decided to create 50,000 megawatt more uh, projects at national level, out of which more than half was in Arunachal Pradesh itself, more than 27,000 megawatt. So, and hundreds of projects were envisaged in subsequent years. I personally feel that if we can focus on 4 5 projects like Siang Upper, Subansiri, Debang, so we can create almost 15,000 megawatt, means out of 27,000 megawatt which was envisaged in Arunachal, we can create 60% of that by simply going for 4 5 projects development. Even if we are not taking up all the hundreds of projects envisaged earlier, 60% of the work will be done by focusing on these few projects. If you see this chart, this pie chart, irrigation potential development is 140 million hectares, which is ultimate irrigation potential, and out of that 76 million hectares is from surface water and 64 million hectares from groundwater. It is heartening to note that almost 90% of the potential created of ultimate irrigation potential utilized is still slightly less, but at least we have created 90% of the ultimate irrigation potential. So, as far as irrigation potential is concerned, we are almost completing the task. And this has even been possible when the expenditure or investment in irrigation has been going down over the years. Still, we have been able to complete the task of creation of irrigation potential. Now we come to the topic of hydropower development. How far we have fared in this, as I discussed earlier also. Here we see that by 31st March 2014, we have created hydropower potential of more than 40,000 megawatt, which is the ultimate hydropower potential at 60% load factor is 84,000 megawatt. So 48.23% of total has been created. But I have checked the 2019 data and it is almost 50,000 megawatt. So the percentage will increase accordingly, means around 60% of the total has been created. This chart shows the basin-wise hydroelectric potential developed as on 31st March 2015. Here, if we see the biggest gap can be seen in this basin, which is Brahmaputra. To be developed is 57,000, which is already developed is very little. Underdevelopment is also very less compared to be developed. In this chart, you can see the basin-wise water availability and live storage in BCM. Here, if you see, the water availability is 525 in case of Ganga, but live storage is 56 BCM. And in Brahmaputra, you can see the very abysmal picture. If you see the per capita water availability versus per capita live storage created in respect of other countries to have a perspective, uh, you see compared to Russia, Australia, Brazil, USA, Turkey, Spain, China, South Africa, we are lagging behind in a huge manner. This table shows the overall scenario of floods and droughts out of the total geographical area. This is the flood prone area, 40 million hectares, and this is 32 million hectare is protectable, and 15.8 million hectare is protected area. These figures are from Rashtriya Bal Ayog data and subsequent data, but now the time has come to revisit these figures using technology and tools available at present. Here you see the annual average damage is also indicated. If you see this map, these are the area which are liable to floods. This map shows it very clearly that this Gangetic belt and Assam, Arunachal, Odisha, and these are the areas which are more liable to floods. This map shows the area prone to drought. Here you can see this portion, pink, is chronically drought prone area, and this middle ones in yellow are frequently drought-prone area, and in green are the least drought-prone area. This table shows that the water demand for various sectors, like for irrigation, drinking water industry, energy, and others, there are two reports which have been used. One is Standing Subcommittee Report of Ministry of Water Resources, and another is National Commission for Integrated Water Resource Development Plan. The figures have been projected for 2025 and 50. The demand seems slightly lower in case of National Commission reports. Now, one very important thing is that how much water we actually need for any service or production or product. Like here you see that for tap water, 1 liter tap water, we use 1 liter, which is very obvious. And in case of 1 liter bottled water, we use 5 liters of water. For one whole orange, we need 50 liters of water, but for one glass orange juice, we need 170 liters because of the processes involved. For tea, 30 liters, coffee, 140, corn, 900 liters, wheat, 1300 liters, soybean, 1800, and for bread, 900 liters, 960 liters, and apple juice, one glass apple juice, 190 liters. When we go to non-vegetarian food, we see for 1 dozen eggs, we need 2400 liter. And for 1 kg chicken meat, we need 3900 liter. And 1 kg pork, we need 4800 liter. And similarly, for 1 kg beef, it is 15,500 liters. What it indicates is that as per our food habits, because we are broadly considered as vegetarians, uh, as per our food habits, we need 2500 to 3000 liters of water per person per day to meet daily water related demands. It is as per a study, if Indians and Chinese adopt the same dietary habits as that of Americans and Europeans, we would be needing 3 Earths to meet our food requirement. One may say that Chinese are considered non-vegetarian. So why it is clubbed with Indians here? Because a lot of their food comes from seafood. So their non-vegetarian food, most of it is coming from seafood, which does not involve consumption of water for creation. So this is the reason why if we adopt the European and American dietary habits, we would be needing 3 Earths to meet our food requirement. So we should thank God that we still are on a path where we are not damaging our Mother Earth. As discussed earlier also, the total annual groundwater, when now we are coming to the topic of groundwater resource and development potential in India. So total annual groundwater recharge is 433 BCM. And this chart shows how much is the draft and how much is natural discharge and how much the balance dynamic groundwater is available. Uh, we many a times focus on how to develop groundwater. It it is similar to saying because groundwater has been accumulated in our aquifers over maybe 100 years, 1000 years, and it is not that there is a box there in the ground and you put the water there, it is stored. These are when you recharge the earth or ground where it is going, that now is possible to work out through aquifer mapping, etc. Earlier it was even not possible to know. What the situation is similar to a saving account and a fixed deposit. Your surface water is your saving account. You get it, you can spend it. This groundwater is like a fixed deposit because it is your peaking demand requirement. Or when your surface water fails, you look to groundwater. This helps you tide over emergency situations and crisis situations. And it is very similar to your fixed deposit assets, which are needed in emergency. If you start developing your fixed deposit, you may sooner or later run into trouble. But it is seen that we are recklessly using groundwater in the country, and the effect of that we can see here that these are the blocks which are overexploited and which is not a very desirable situation which should be avoided. Now, when we talk of water quality management, I assume that all these topics, groundwater and water quality and all, will be dealt separately in detail in the coming lectures. But I want to touch on these topics a little bit so that you have a broad idea of these things. When we talk of water quality, we see that what contamination you can get to water through what means. What type of contamination can be there? Physical, it can be, means you have soil in it, or chemical, or metals, or organics, or bacteriological, biological, radioactive, all kinds of issues can be there with the water. But what water actually you need? You need which is aesthetically acceptable. You don't need a water which before drinking it is not very welcome situation. It is it is necessary that it is sparkling water, clear water, and it does not it is chemically safe. It does not have organic substances. It doesn't have any bacteria, etc., and radioactive elements, not at all. So we need safe water and wholesome water. CWC during these years has been very actively uh, creating water quality labs and monitoring. So as per the details available with me, this is being monitored at 371 stations, and we maintain 258 water quality level 1 lab. Now it is continuously increasing as per 12th plan. It is I was told that it has more than 500 water quality stations now. These earlier were started with a limited objective of use of water for irrigation and other related uses. But now it includes physical, chemical, microbiological, trace and toxic metals and pesticides also. We have three tier of laboratories for water quality analysis, and this pie chart shows the basin wise observation stations uh, in but this data seems a little old because now if there are more than 500, then it can be get updated. And in level 1 laboratory, which are 258 in number, these are the parameters, temperature, color, order, TDS, electrical conductivity, pH, and dissolved oxygen, which are measured. In level 2, the locations are given here where we have in our which offices we have the level 2 laboratories and what parameters we measure there. This is also indicated here. And in level 3 and our level 2 plus laboratory are in 4 divisions mentioned here, where even the toxic metals and pesticides are being tested, and the outcome of these efforts is shown in the form of publication of water quality yearbook and water quality bulletin every month, and a status report about river, and then trend analysis report of river. And this the data is also made available to other agencies, and it is presented in various seminars, conferences, etc. And we conduct a special study also, and we publish hotspot report also. Before moving further, we can have a look up the things discussed or status of water resources management, that we see that we already have 96% urban and 85% rural uh, water supply, at least basic water, and irrigation potential is to ultimate is 140, out of which 90% we have created, though utilization is a little lesser. Storage creation, we need 450 BCM and we have created 253. Hydropower, uh, we have 150 gigawatt like approximately potential, and we have installed about 50 gigawatt. And irrigation efficiencies, we have surface irrigation efficiency of a low surface irrigation efficiency of 40% and groundwater 70%. The target is to enhance these efficiencies by 20%. Then flood control area or flood prone area actually is 40 million hectare. But now these figures need to be revisited, as I stated earlier also, that using technology and tools, you should be seeing how much actually the flood prone area not, as on date is there, and how much it is being protected. Apart from that, there are 350 polluted river stretches in the country as on year 2018. Now, I will discuss briefly about the constitutional provisions for water. We see that entry 17 of list 2 state list of the 7th schedule states that, so water, that is to say, water supplies, irrigation and canals, drainage and embankments, water storage and water power, subject to provisions of entry 56 of list 1, are mandated with state governments. Now, entry 56 of list 1, union list of the 7th schedule, says that regulation and development of interstate rivers and river valleys, to the extent to which such regulation and development under the control of the union is declared by parliament by law to be expedient in the public interest, means interstate rivers the union government can regulate and develop. Article 262 has the provision for adjudication of disputes related to waters of the interstate rivers or river valleys. So, broadly, if you see, so development and management of water resources falls within the purview of the states. Here you see the water sector setup in India. Central government level, overall planning in the country, Ministry of Jal Shakti. We have two departments, as you are aware, Department of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, and Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. These two departments have been merged in last 1 year, And apart from this, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, and Niti Aayog also look after the water sector issues. State government, Water Resources Department, Irrigation Department, CADA, Minor Irrigation Department, Flood Control, PHED, PWD, and Water User Association, Panchayati Raj Institution, NGOs, etc., are working in the water sector. In Ministry of Jal Shakti, in our department, this here the list of attached and subordinate offices, registered societies, statutory bodies, autonomous bodies, public sector enterprises are given. And there is Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. Apart from this, we in these slides I have provided the mandate of Department of Water Resources. What are those are enumerated here. You can go through this and understand. uh, Broadly you have idea, but I have provided these lists for reference. Then you have the functions of various departments. Here you can see Central Water Commission, Central Groundwater Board, then CSMRS, CWPRS, GFCC, SSCAC, Bansagar Control Board, Upper Yamuna River Board. The functions of all these departments is enumerated here for your ready reference. So mandate of Department of Drinking Water Supply, basically they look after rural water supply and sanitation. Now, to work effectively, you need water policy to recognize the importance of water, to take into account the federal structure of the country and allocation of responsibility in respect of water in the constitution, to take cognizance of the existing situation, and to propose a framework for creation of a system of laws and institutions. Also, to ensure planning of water resources with a unified national perspective. So, for this purpose, in 1983, National Water Resources Council was formed under the chairmanship of Honorable Prime Minister. This was entrusted to formulate the national water policy and to review it from time to time. National Water Policy was approved and adopted by National Water Resources Council in 1987. Further, a National Water Board was constituted to review the progress achieved in implementation of the National Water Policy and to report the progress to National Water Resources Council from time to time. If you see this chart or this slide, we first National Water Policy was adopted in 1987. Then in 2002, it was reviewed and updated because of the emerging issues and challenges. Further, after 10 years, in 2012, the National Water Policy was reviewed and updated to incorporate the strategies identified in National Water Mission document, basically mainly to account for the challenges arising out of the climate change scenario. Uh, this National Water Policy was updated. I have enumerated here the basic principles of National Water Policy, and certain things I will mention that from 1987 itself, in the first document itself, it was mentioned that river basins should be the river basin or sub basin should be the basic hydrological unit for planning. In the latest National Water Policy, that is of 2012, there is emphasis on need for National Water Framework Law, comprehensive legislation for optimum development of interstate rivers and river valleys. Also, to treat water as economic good. This Here you can see this has been emphasized that after meeting all the preemptive needs for safe drinking water and sanitation, achieving food security, supporting poor people dependent on agriculture for their livelihood, and high priority allocation for minimum ecosystem needs, the water should be treated as economic good so as to promote its conservation and efficient use. Ecological ecological needs of the river for e-flows, which we call, that has also become a very prominent in this document. Benchmarking for water uses, then Water Regulatory Authority has become important in national water policy of 2012. It has been mentioned that water users associations should be given statutory powers. This is a relatively new thing. Earlier, what creation of water user associations was there, but now it was said that water user associations should be given statutory powers to collect and retain a portion of water charges, manage the volumetric quantum of water allotted to them, and maintain the distribution system in their jurisdiction. Also, the criteria for water supply in urban areas and in rural areas was very different, and almost the half the rural area demand was designated as half of urban area uh, per capita per day. But this kind of disparity, it was sought to be removed in this national water policies. Lastly, the process, it is because this also has almost 8 years now that this policy was framed. Now it again needs to be updated to account for the recent issues and challenges. So, what is the way forward? I am trying to sum up here that India just cannot afford to lose even a single drop of water flowing to the sea unproductively. We must create surface storages and big ones, which helps in drought proofing also and expedite interlinking of rivers. We need to improve efficiency of irrigation systems. We need to recycle and reuse. We need to form river basin organizations for managing for carrying out integrated water resources management at river basin scale. We need to treat waste before discharging these in lakes and rivers. Over reliance on groundwater needs to be curtailed. Apart from that, these structural and non-structural measures for moderation of floods should be done more and more. Watershed management in drought-prone areas, then rationalizing of cropping pattern, maintenance of environmental flows in rivers and estuaries, and management of water resources at river basin level. Before I conclude, I have a suggestion for you all, dear officers. We come across many documents, manuals, technical papers while we are doing our work, but we should also not forget that we have a great heritage, even as far as water sector is concerned, water conservation and management. We have been for centuries doing it very efficiently and effectively, which in modern times have been forgotten to an extent. I, I would request you to read two books which are not mainstream for you at the moment, or which is not part of your office work, but just for having idea that how our ancestors managed our resources, water resources, how they conserved it. You can go through these very small books by Anupam Mishra. One is uh, आज भी खरे हैं तालाब. Another is राजस्थान की रजत बूंदे. It would be you'll find it very interesting to read and to come what were our ancestors used to do and how we can get benefited by this. There are so many things to read, but these two, for a beginning, I would suggest. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself in these difficult times. Thanks a lot.